Welcome to the Feminist Park Podcast. I'm Kwame.
And I'm Leilani. It's great to be kicking off this journey with you all today.
Yeah, we're diving into work that's really closely tied to the vision behind the Feminist Park Project, which was founded by Hussein Stuck.
That project's goal is pretty ambitious, isn't it? Imagining these truly equitable public spaces, starting with the idea for an intersectional feminist park right here in Berlin.
Exactly. And this podcast, well, it's kind of an extension of that. We're going to be digging into the academic research that, supports and informs that kind of vision.
We'll be taking these dense, sometimes quite academic papers and really pulling out the core and insights.
And looking at them through specific lenses, things like environmental justice, intersectionality, anti-colonial thought, queer theory.
All the stuff that helps us think critically about space.
We're actually starting with some background research that Hussein came across early on. And it highlighted something, well, frankly, quite jarring. That the benefits we think we all get from urban green spaces, parks and squares and things like physical and mental well-being, they're often deeply gendered.
Meaning women and also gender-diverse people, they just don't get the same access or experience those benefits in the same way men do.
Right. Less equitable access, fewer benefits. It seems almost counterintuitive, doesn't it? A park is just a park, open to everyone. Ever stepped into a city square, a public park, or, even waited at a bus stop and just felt a bit off? As if the space, while it looks neutral, maybe wasn't quite designed for you.
Right.
We often talk about urban environments as just backdrops to our lives, right? Places that passively sort of facilitate our movements, our work, our leisure.
Yeah, that's a common assumption.
But what if that's just, a profound myth? What if our cities are, in fact, deeply gendered?
Oh, yeah.
And in ways so subtle, so ingrained, we might not even consciously realize it.
That's a powerful question. And it cuts right to the heart of today's deep dive, actually.
Okay.
We're going to unpack an incredibly insightful academic article. It's titled Women in Cities by Linda Peake and Geraldine Pratt.
Peake and Pratt. Got it.
And what's truly fascinating here is how Peake and Pratt don't just, critique the status quo. They meticulously unmask the complex, often invisible mechanisms.
Invisible, yeah.
Through which cities actively produce and reproduce gender inequalities. They really challenge us to look beyond the surface of urban life.
So, urging us to see the systemic stuff, the things embedded in the environment itself.
Exactly, the systemic issues.
Okay. And that's our mission today, then. We're going to try and extract the most important nuggets from their groundbreaking research, understanding how gender profoundly shapes everything, like from our daily commutes and access to resources, all the way to our fundamental sense of safety.
Right. It's quite comprehensive.
Then we're going to take these vital, sometimes startling insights and connect them directly to the powerful visionary concept of the feminist park.
A really crucial connection to make.
Yeah, so by the end of this deep dive, you, the listener, should gain a kind of shortcut to being well-informed about these profound, often overlooked implications of urban design on gender, social justice, and, our collective liberation.
A very worthwhile goal.
So let's jump in.
Indeed. So Linda Peake and Geraldine Pratt are renowned urban geographers. Their article is a critical, almost foundational contribution to understanding how cities actually function for different populations.
Okay. Foundational.
Yeah, their central premise is quite revolutionary, really. It fundamentally challenges that widespread, yet often unexamined notion that urbanization is a gender-neutral process.
The idea that it just happens and affects everyone the same way?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Instead, they argue that women's experiences of urban life are demonstrably different from men's. And critically, these distinct experiences are consistently overlooked, marginalized, or, frankly, outright ignored in conventional urban planning.
Okay, let's unpack this a little further. When they say gender-neutral myth, what exactly are they getting at?
Well, they're essentially telling us that cities aren't just impartial stages for human activity.
Right, not just backdrops.
No. Rather, they argue cities are active participants in shaping our gender roles and perpetuating inequalities.
How so? Give us an example.
Think about it. The placement of a streetlight, the routing of a bus line, the availability or lack of public restrooms, even the type of vegetation in a park.
Okay.
These aren't neutral, apolitical decisions. They're imbued with deep-seated assumptions about who uses the city, when they use it, and for what purpose.
Assumptions baked into the design.
Exactly. And these assumptions often reflect a historical, often male-centric, and economically driven perspective, one that prioritizes certain kinds of activities and users over others.
Like the typical commuter, maybe.
Often, yes. So if you're not that ideal user, often envisioned as, say, a male commuter with a direct work trip, the city's design subtly works against you.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not actively malicious necessarily, but the outcome is discriminatory.
Precisely. And this is why they argued that women and gender-diverse individuals experience insecurity in urban life across not one, but three deeply interconnected dimensions.
3 dimensions, okay? What are they?
It's a comprehensive framework, helps us see the full picture. The first is economic insecurity.
Economic insecurity.
And this is much more than just a lack of money. It's about persistent barriers to employment, inadequate access to vital economic resources, and a stark lack of control over one's own finances, often compounded by unpaid labor, too.
So not just about individual wealth, as you said, but systemic vulnerability, something built into the urban structure.
Exactly. It's systemic. The second dimension is social insecurity.
Social insecurity.
This covers a whole range of experiences, from literal spatial limitations like being unable to access certain parts of the city safely or comfortably,
Right.
to a pervasive underlying fear that really impacts daily choices. It includes the constant threat of violence, harassment, discrimination.
That sounds exhausting.
It is, and it ultimately culminates in the inability to participate fully, freely, and equally in all aspects of city life. Imagine always having to plan your route based on perceived danger or feeling unwelcome in public spaces just because of who you are.
Yeah.
That's social insecurity in action.
So it's not just a physical barrier, but a psychological one, too. It restricts your agency, your freedom.
Absolutely. A profound psychological barrier. And finally, the third is environmental insecurity.
Environmental insecurity. Tell me more about that one.
This refers to a lack of adequate public services, things we often take for granted, like clean water, proper sanitation, reliable waste management, or even accessible, safe green spaces.
Basic necessities, really.
Exactly.
Oh.
But it also encompasses disproportionate exposure to pollution and the heightened impacts of climate change, which often hit vulnerable urban populations, particularly women and marginalized groups, the hardest. We'll get into some examples later.
Wow. Okay, those 3 dimensions, economic, social, and environmental, they really paint a chillingly comprehensive picture, don't they?
They do.
It's not just one isolated challenge people face, it's a multi-layered web of vulnerability.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just isolated issues you can tackle one by one in silos.
Right now.
No, they're deeply intertwined. They create this reinforcing cycle of vulnerability.
How does that work?
Well, for example, economic insecurity might force women into precarious, low-paying jobs. These jobs might require long commutes through unsafe areas,
Okay.
which directly exacerbates their social insecurity, right? Due to lack of safe transport options or just the fear of violence.
Right, I see the link.
And this might, in turn, limit their access to better housing or healthcare, exposing them to environmental insecurities, like maybe living near polluting industrial zones or in areas with inadequate sanitation in informal settlements.
So it's a systemic web where one vulnerability feeds into another, making it incredibly difficult to escape.
Precisely. Escape becomes incredibly difficult.
And it's crucial to understand, isn't it, that this isn't some brand new idea born in a vacuum. Peake and Pratt, they explain that their article is part of a larger, really important academic tradition, the women in cities approach.
Yes, exactly. It's built on decades of feminist scholarship.
So this theoretical framework, it emerged in response to, and as a powerful counter to, that historical tendency in urban theory to treat gender as what? An afterthought.
Yeah, pretty much an add-on. Something you might consider after you've designed the main city structures, rather than seeing gender as a fundamental lens for analysis right from the very beginning.
Right. Not foundational.
Not foundational in traditional approaches, no. So this Women in Cities framework, it champions the crucial need to disaggregate data by gender.
Disaggregate, meaning?
Meaning breaking down statistics and information to see how men, women, and gender-diverse individuals experience the city differently, instead of just lumping everyone into a single, undifferentiated citizen category.
Okay, see the differences.
See the differences. And it emphasizes that we need to truly understand urban life through the everyday, lived experiences of diverse women.
Diverse women, yeah. Because women aren't a monolithic group, right?
Absolutely not. Their experiences are profoundly shaped by an intersection of factors: race, class, sexuality, ability, migration status, so many things.
And ignoring these nuances means we're basically designing cities that only truly work for a very narrow slice of the population.
That's the outcome, yes.
Yeah.
A very narrow segment.
So what does this all mean for us, for the listeners, and maybe for urban planning in general?
Well, it means we absolutely must move far beyond a simplistic, one-size-fits-all approach to city planning. It's just not adequate.
Yeah.
It means actively listening to the incredibly diverse voices and daily lives that are too often invisible in official statistics, in urban policy documents, and in the designs themselves.
We can't just assume then that what works for one group, say that young, able-bodied male commuter we mentioned, will work for everyone else.
We simply cannot make that assumption.
Right.
And to achieve this kind of inclusive planning, Peake and Pratt demonstrate that we require a really deep, nuanced, intersectional analysis.
Right, which is exactly what their work provides and what we'll keep exploring now.
Exactly.
Okay, let's dive deeper into that intersectional analysis then, starting with the foundational feminist and gender perspective. Peake and Pratt, they lay out in extensive detail how women's daily routines, their mobility patterns, their activities, especially those related to what academics call social reproduction and care work,
Social reproduction, yeah.
how those are profoundly shaped and, frankly, often constrained by urban design and prevailing societal norms.
It's absolutely crucial to understand this concept of social reproduction.
Yeah.
It's not always obvious what it means.
Okay, break it down for us.
It refers to all the usually unpaid work that goes into maintaining a household and raising the next generation.
Like,
Things like childcare, cooking, cleaning, caring for elderly relatives, managing household budgets, coordinating family life, all that essential stuff.
the work that keeps society running, basically.
Precisely. Essential work, predominantly performed by women globally. Yet it's largely invisible to formal economic systems and, crucially for our discussion, often invisible to urban planners.
So, if the city isn't designed with this invisible labor in mind, what are the practical consequences for women? What does that look like on the ground?
Well, one major consequence is how it impacts travel patterns. Women often engage in what are called trip chains throughout the day.
Trip days.
Yeah, complex multi-stop journeys. Think about it. Dropping children at school, then maybe going to a paid job, then stopping at the grocery store on the way back, maybe visiting an elderly parent, picking up children again, and finally returning home.
Right, a lot of stops, and not just A to B.
Exactly. Very different from the more linear, often single-destination commutes, typically made by men going directly to and from a paid job.
Okay.
So if public transport routes and schedules, for example, are designed only for those linear peak-hour radial commutes, from residential suburbs to the central business district and back.
Which they often are.
They often are. Then it effectively penalizes women for their caregiving responsibilities. It makes those complex trip chains much harder. It forces them to take longer routes, maybe make multiple transfers, wait longer for infrequent off-peak buses, or rely on more expensive private transport if they can even afford it.
Which dramatically increases their time poverty. Takes up more of their day.
Exactly.
Yep.
Increases time poverty and limits their overall mobility. These are what Peake and Pratt term gendered geographies,
Gendered geographies.
meaning the physical and social organization of urban space is deeply influenced by, and in turn influences, gender roles and experiences. It literally dictates how women live, work, and move through cities globally.
That makes so much sense. It's not just a minor inconvenience. It feels like a systemic barrier built into the city's rhythm.
It is a systemic barrier.
Yeah.
And a huge, often terrifying part of that gender geography is the pervasive issue of safety, fear, and violence in cities.
Yes, safety.
The article identifies gendered fear and violence not as, isolated incidents here and there, but as long-standing, deeply entrenched issues.
Entrenched, yeah.
They manifest in diverse contexts, from seemingly innocuous public spaces like parks or streets to the supposedly private sphere of the home.
And it's a fundamental barrier, isn't it? A debilitating one to women's full, uninhibited participation in urban life.
Absolutely fundamental. Peake and Pratt cite truly alarming and visceral examples from around the world.
Like what?
In India, for instance, they discuss public harassment, often euphemistically called eve teasing.
Eve teasing, right. Heard that term.
It's a pervasive, almost normalized experience for women. And this isn't just catcalling. It's a whole spectrum of unwanted attention, groping, intimidation. It creates a constant sense of vulnerability.
Just walking down the street.
Just trying to exist in public space. This issue was tragically brought into sharp global focus by the horrific Delhi gang rape case some years ago.
Yes, I remember. Horrific.
And that case really revealed how urban design and public attitudes could be complicit in perpetuating this sense of insecurity and vulnerability for women.
How so? The design part.
It showed how inadequate planning, things like poorly lit streets, lack of accessible emergency services, maybe even the absence of active public life like eyes on the street that could deter aggressors. How all that, combined with a deeply ingrained victim-blaming culture, can normalize harassment and make it incredibly difficult for women to claim their fundamental right to public space.
So the environment itself can feel hostile, or at least unsupportive.
Exactly. Unsupportive or even enabling of violence.
And it's not just about public spaces, is it? The article also bravely touches on the hidden but profound issue of domestic violence,
Yes.
which, though often confined to private homes, you're saying has significant urban planning implications.
Yes, absolutely. Because urban design can subtly yet powerfully impact access to support services, to safe havens, to viable escape routes for those experiencing violence.
How does that connection work?
For example, if women's shelters are located in isolated, hard-to-reach areas, maybe poorly served by public transport,
Okay.
or if that public transport itself feels unsafe or is unavailable at crucial times, it creates additional, sometimes insurmountable barriers for women trying to leave abusive situations.
So the city's structure can track people.
Inadvertently, yes. Even something seemingly neutral, like housing policy. If there are no affordable, safe housing alternatives available within their communities, it can inadvertently trap individuals in violent situations.
Right.
The city's infrastructure of support, or lack thereof, needs to be considered as a whole system, not just as isolated services.
That's a really important point. And then there's the clear, undeniable role of just bad infrastructure itself.
Yes, inadequate urban infrastructure. Things like poor lighting, we mentioned that, lack of safe, frequent public transport, poorly designed, secluded parks.
Overgrown bushes, dark corners.
Exactly. All these things exacerbate both the fear of violence and actual violence against women. Imagine walking down a street with flickering, unreliable streetlights, or waiting at a bus stop that's completely isolated and unlit at night.
Yeah, terrifying.
Or entering a park with overgrown bushes that block sightlines. These design failures actively contribute to the pervasive sense of insecurity many women experience daily.
But here's where it truly gets, well, compelling. Because the article doesn't just present these problems, does it? It also powerfully highlights how activism directly challenges and seeks to rectify these entrenched norms.
Yes, the resistance is key.
Movements like slut walks, for example, they emerged globally, gained incredible momentum, and they directly confront those victim-blaming narratives and patriarchal norms around sexual violence in public spaces.
Absolutely. They are a visceral, collective act of reclaiming public space.
Reclaiming space, yeah, and demanding accountability, right, not just from individuals, but from the systems that enable such violence.
That's what's profoundly significant here.
Yeah.
How these movements directly confront the failures of urban design and policy to ensure safety and dignity for all citizens, not just for a normative, privileged few.
How do they do that through a protest like Slut Walk?
Well, by marching en masse in public spaces, often in attire that deliberately challenges those traditional victim-blaming narratives. You know, the idea that a woman's clothing somehow invites or justifies violence.
Right, challenging that directly.
They are fundamentally demanding that cities be designed, governed, and policed in a way that truly protects and empowers all inhabitants, regardless of what they wear, who they are, or when they choose to be out in public.
So it's a powerful collective statement. Urban spaces for everyone.
Exactly. Not just those deemed appropriate or safe by outdated norms, it's an assertion of the right to the city for all women and gender-diverse individuals.
Okay, that makes sense. The article also zeroes in on something called time poverty and social reproduction, a concept that, once you get it, really hits home and reveals the hidden costs of urban living for women.
Yes, time poverty is huge.
It discusses the double day phenomenon. Can you explain that?
The double day is where women are often engaged in both paid labor and extensive unpaid household and care work.
Right, working one shift at a job and another at home.
Basically, yes. And this relentless cycle severely limits their leisure time, their opportunities for self-development, and crucially, their mobility within the city.
Limits mobility too.
Just the sheer lack of time. Peake and Pratt even reference this striking historical visual. A poster saying, "Housewives, please finish traveling by 4 o'clock."
Wow. Seriously?
Yes. It's a stark example of this historical expectation, the implicit societal pressure on women to complete their errands by a certain hour, effectively limiting their public presence.
Kind of corralling them back into the domestic sphere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this phenomenon, the double day, Whether you observe it in the global north or south, it has really far-reaching consequences.
Like what?
It significantly impacts women's ability to access further education, for instance, or to cultivate robust social networks beyond their immediate family, or to participate meaningfully in political and civic life.
Because there's just no time or energy left.
Precisely. If your entire day is consumed by paid work, often low-wage or precarious, followed immediately by extensive unpaid care work for family members, there's simply no time, energy, or mental space left for anything else.
And you're saying this isn't just a personal burden or an individual choice?
No, it's a structural barrier, a barrier to full civic engagement, personal development, overall well-being, and it reinforces a gendered division of labor that the city, through its design and services, often inadvertently supports.
Okay, here's where it becomes really clear just how pervasive these issues are. The article shows us that even something as seemingly simple as a bus schedule that doesn't account for those multi-stop trip chains we discussed,
Right.
or the location of a public park that's miles from residential areas and lacks integrated childcare facilities,
Yeah, basic planning decisions.
can profoundly deepen existing inequalities. These seemingly neutral urban decisions effectively reinforce the double day. They subtly limit women's public presence and contribute directly to their economic and social insecurity.
Yes, the city, in its very structure, can make it harder for women to balance their responsibilities and enjoy public life.
Okay, moving on to another critical lens. The article thoughtfully incorporates a queer theory perspective, doesn't it? Specifically acknowledging how cities often fail to adequately serve, or sometimes actively marginalize, LGBTQIA plus individuals.
Yes, this is a vital inclusion. It really highlights the intersectional nature of urban inequality.
How do Peake and Pratt address this?
Well, they explicitly list sexualities in queer urban spaces and urban design for queer geographies as key research foci in their tables that summarize feminist research trends.
Okay, so it's clearly marked as important.
Yes. And this crucial acknowledgement means recognizing that public spaces are often implicitly designed with deeply ingrained heteronormative assumptions.
Heteronormative, meaning?
Meaning they assume a cisgender heterosexual user as the default, the normal user.
Right.
And this automatically marginalizes everyone who doesn't fit that mold. It makes their experiences in the city fundamentally different, often more challenging or dangerous.
And these heteronormative assumptions, they have very real, often dangerous consequences, don't they? The article touches on the specific vulnerabilities faced by LGBTQIA plus individuals.
Absolutely. The violence can range from pervasive verbal harassment, slurs, discrimination, all the way to severe physical assaults, all driven by systemic homophobia, transphobia, and other forms of prejudice.
So public spaces, which are supposed to be for everyone,
Theoretically, yes.
can quickly become sites of heightened insecurity for LGBTQIA plus individuals.
They certainly can. This might be due to a lack of visible community support, or simply an urban design that doesn't consider their safety needs at all.
Can you give an example of that design aspect?
Sure. Think about a park designed primarily for traditional nuclear family units.
No.
Maybe it only has gender-segregated restrooms. Maybe the advertising or signage exclusively depicts heterosexual couples.
Okay.
That kind of environment might not feel safe or welcoming for queer couples or transgender individuals or non-binary people. It can make them targets for harassment.
Or just make them feel completely invisible or out of place.
Exactly. It can force them into less visible areas, making it harder to find community or simply exist openly and authentically.
So this raises an important question, doesn't it? If public spaces are designed around this singular heteronormative idea of a family unit or appropriate public behavior, what does that mean for everyone who doesn't fit that mold?
It means they're often pushed to the margins, forced into less visible, sometimes even dangerous spaces to find community or just live their lives.
And it's really important to note, you mentioned earlier that the activism, like slut walks, has often broadened its scope
Yes.
to explicitly include transgender people, demonstrating a kind of crucial intersectional solidarity.
Yes, exactly. Challenging norms about who belongs in public spaces and who deserves to be safe there.
So it shows a growing and essential recognition that gender and sexuality are intertwined,
Wow.
inseparable.
Yes, and that the fight for urban justice must be truly inclusive of all gender-diverse individuals. It's about collective liberation, recognizing that vulnerability and the need for safe spaces extend across all these identities.
Okay. Now, Let's turn our attention to the absolutely vital migrant and racial justice perspective. The article heavily emphasizes the Global South, doesn't it, as a critical lens for understanding these dynamics.
Yes, and this is a crucial shift in focus for much urban theory, because in many parts of the Global South, rapid urbanization is happening at an unprecedented pace.
Faster than infrastructure can keep up.
Often, yes, without adequate planning, infrastructure, or resources to support it. And this scenario severely exacerbates existing inequalities for migrant and racialized communities.
Oh, so?
Well, these burgeoning cities are frequently sites of intense competition for scarce resources. They're often characterized by precarious, informal economies, and they're structured by deep-seated social hierarchies that tragically mirror and perpetuate colonial legacies.
Colonial legacies still shaping cities today?
Absolutely. The very layout and resource distribution of many cities are often a direct result of historical power imbalances established during colonial rule.
Wow. Peake and Pratt provide a profoundly compelling case study for this, don't they? From Manila, Philippines. Migrant women in Dagang Barrio.
Yes, that case study is incredibly insightful and unfortunately heartbreakingly common in many parts of the world.
Tell us about it.
It focuses on migrant women, many whom work as domestic workers. They've moved to Manila, often from rural areas or even other countries, seeking work.
Okay.
They then send crucial remittances, money they earn back, to support their families in their home countries or provinces.
Right, supporting families from afar.
Exactly. This phenomenon is what Peake and Pratt, citing other researchers, powerfully term social reproduction across borders.
Social reproduction across borders.
Well, their labor, which is often incredibly undervalued and unprotected, isn't just crucial for their own family's survival. It also underpins the economies of both their home and host countries. Think about who is doing the care work that allows others to participate in the formal economy.
Right. Essential, but invisible again.
Very often, yes. And these women frequently face extremely precarious working conditions, a severe lack of basic rights, and incredibly limited access to essential urban resources like affordable housing, decent health care, or legal protections.
So they're highly vulnerable.
Highly vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, and discrimination because their migration status or their informality often means they have limited recourse to justice or support systems.
So their struggle really highlights how these big global economic forces converge in urban spaces, creating these deeply gendered and racialized vulnerabilities.
Exactly. It's a perfect storm of global economics, gender, and urban inequality.
And there's another powerful, historically resonant example in the article too, right? From Georgetown, Guyana, highlighting colonial legacies and racialized inequality embedded directly into the urban plan.
Yes, Georgetown is a striking example. Here we see a stark, tangible contrast etched into the very fabric of the city.
How does that look?
Historically, Georgetown was deliberately planned by colonial powers. Specific, meticulously designed areas, the Garden City parts, were designated for the colonial elite.
Okay, plan for the powerful.
Right. These areas boasted amenities, manicured parks, proper drainage, robust infrastructure. But parallel to this planned development, other areas emerged, often informally.
The unplanned parts.
Yes. And these became what Peake and Pratt starkly describe as garbage cities.
Garbage cities, that's a harsh term.
It reflects the reality. Underserviced, lacking basic infrastructure like sanitation or drainage, prone to severe flooding, and often completely neglected by municipal authorities.
And who lives in these garbage cities?
Predominantly racialized communities, often descendants of enslaved people or indentured laborers brought over during the colonial era, plus more recent migrants.
And they face specific challenges.
They experience a heightened degree of economic insecurity, a desperate struggle for formal employment, and face systemic barriers to essential resources and basic safety. The city's design itself, a relic of colonial rule, continues to segregate and disadvantage them today.
So, when we talk about the design of a city, it's not just about buildings and roads now, is it?
Not at all.
It's a living testament to these deeply embedded historical and social structures, like colonialism and racial hierarchies.
Yes, structures that continue to actively segregate, marginalize, and disadvantage certain communities today. The very layout reflects and reinforces these historical power dynamics.
And the article gives a vivid example of this, right? The Bajonic traders.
Yeah, the Bajonic traders, often women, street vendors, their informal economic activities are absolutely crucial for their survival and for feeding their communities. But their work is simultaneously highly precarious. They're vulnerable to harassment, maybe extortion, and their activities are often criminalized or pushed to the margins by city authorities.
So it illustrates the fragility of just trying to make a living in the informal economy within these segregated, inequitable urban landscapes.
Exactly. Survival becomes a constant negotiation with a hostile or indifferent system.
And this perspective, this racial justice lens, it also extends beyond the global south, right? The article mentions Indigenous women in Canada.
Yes, demonstrating that these issues are tragically universal, even within wealthy nations. Peake and Pratt referenced the horrifyingly disproportionate violence and systemic lack of justice faced by Indigenous women and gender-diverse people in Canada.
So even in a supposedly developed context.
Even there, it illustrates how systemic racism and enduring colonial legacies continue to manifest within urban settings. Historical injustices translate directly into ongoing urban insecurity.
Like what kind of insecurity?
Lack of safe, adequate housing, inadequate public services in communities, and often a dismissive or outright hostile response from authorities when violence or discrimination occurs against racialized individuals.
So it's a stark reminder that urban design and policy can perpetuate profound injustices everywhere, regardless of national wealth.
Precisely. Privilege doesn't erase these systemic issues for marginalized groups within those societies.
Okay. Finally, let's integrate the class and socioeconomic perspective into this expanding picture. This lens helps us see how economic disparities just profoundly impact every aspect of urban experiences and make other forms of insecurity even worse.
Absolutely. They're deeply interwoven. The article revisits economic insecurity in labor, explicitly linking it to the precariousness of formal versus informal work.
Right.
And it deepens our understanding of that concept, the reproduction of labor power.
Remind us what that is again.
It refers to all the undervalued, often invisible work again, primarily performed by women that maintains and replenishes the workforce day after day, generation after generation.
The social reproduction stuff we talked about?
Exactly. Childcare, cooking, cleaning, emotional labor. It's absolutely essential for society to function and for the formal economy to even have workers. Yet it is almost universally unpaid or extremely low paid.
And this systemic undervaluation leads to
It results in low wages and precarious employment, which disproportionately affect women, particularly in the global south, where informal work dominates and often offers absolutely no benefits, no security, no protections.
And this economic precarity leads directly to entrenched urban poverty and unequal resource distribution, right?
Yes. Peake and Pratt emphasize how urban poverty is profoundly gendered. Women often have even more limited access to resources, less control over land and housing,
Less power, basically.
less economic and spatial power, yes. And they're disproportionately impacted by things like gentrification.
How does gentrification fit in?
Well, gentrification often pushes low-income residents, frequently women in racialized communities, out of newly desirable, affordable areas. But without providing viable, affordable alternatives nearby, it just displaces poverty and insecurity.
So they lose their homes, their communities.
Their support networks, everything. The disparity is absolutely striking and deeply unjust. Think again about that contrast in Georgetown.
The gated communities versus the informal settlements.
Exactly. Happy Acres, with its manicured lawns, private security, robust infrastructure, exclusive amenities, versus Diamond, lacking basic services, prone to flooding, perpetually overlooked by municipal planning.
It's not just a difference in wealth, is it?
No, it's a stark illustration of class-based disparities in urban resource distribution, where quality public spaces, good infrastructure, safety, they're treated as amenities for the wealthy, not as fundamental rights for all citizens.
Which brings up that crucial question again.
Yes, who truly benefits from urban development and whose needs are continually marginalized and ignored?
And the answer? Too often.
The answer, too often, is that those with existing economic and political power dictate the terms, leaving vulnerable populations behind in increasingly precarious conditions.
Now, there was a very specific and I think incredibly impactful finding highlighted in the article relating to class and gender, the impact of childcare costs as a barrier.
Ah, yes, a very tangible link between social reproduction and economic inequality.
Tell us about that.
This is a prime example of how these big systemic issues manifest in daily life decisions. The article cites crucial research from Canada,
Okay.
revealing that the absolutely exorbitant costs of unsubsidized childcare significantly limit women's participation in the paid labor force.
So it's not just an individual family's problem to solve.
No, it's presented as a structural barrier, a policy failure, really.
Yep.
It actively perpetuates economic inequality by making paid employment economically unviable for many women, especially those in lower-paying jobs.
So.
For countless women, the entire cost of their potential earnings would be consumed or even outweighed by childcare fees.
So working outside the home literally wouldn't pay.
Exactly. It becomes a huge impediment to their professional advancement, their economic independence, and their overall ability to fully engage in public life. It reinforces the double day by making the unpaid option almost the only feasible one for many.
So it's a policy failure with profound gendered and class-based impacts.
Absolutely. Affecting lower-income women most severely.
That's a powerful point about how these seemingly domestic issues have massive urban, economic, and social consequences. It really shows the interconnectedness of all these perspectives we've discussed.
It truly does. They can't be separated.
Okay. So, after this incredibly thorough and frankly at times quite sobering deep dive into Peake and Pratt's Women in Cities, let's bring all these insights together. Let's connect them back to the Feminist Park.
Right. The application.
This article, in its comprehensive critique of existing urban environments, it powerfully validates the fundamental urgent need for initiatives like the Feminist Park, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
By meticulously highlighting these widespread, deeply ingrained gendered insecurities in urban spaces all around the globe, it shows it's not just a nice idea, it's an essential response to a documented, pervasive problem.
Precisely. The insights gleaned from Peake and Pratt's work provide not just that sharp critique we needed, but crucially, they offer a kind of blueprint, a powerful blueprint for how the Feminist Park can be a truly transformative space.
How so? What does the blueprint look like?
It illuminates precisely what needs to be addressed in urban design, safety, access, care, equity, and why creating such a dedicated, intentionally designed space is so critically important for social justice and liberation.
Okay, let's break that down. Let's start with how it can address safety and fear. The article hammered home how inadequate urban infrastructure, poor lighting, neglected spaces exacerbates fear and actual violence against women and gender-diverse individuals. So how does a feminist park counter that?
Well, by its very nature and deliberate design, it directly counters these issues by prioritizing safe design right from the initial concept, from the ground up.
What does that look like practically?
Practically, it means implementing good, consistent, ample lighting throughout the park, not just at entrances, ensuring visible surveillance.
Cameras.
Not necessarily just cameras, though they might play a role. More importantly, design that encourages natural community oversight. Clear sightlines, no hidden nooks, no overgrown bushes or isolated corners where potential aggressors can hide.
Okay, designing out the hiding spots.
Exactly. Clear, well-maintained pathways that lead to visible exits. Open, transparent landscaping, all these elements contribute to a heightened sense of security that is often glaringly absent in conventional parks.
So it's about designing a space where women, LGBTQIA plus individuals, other vulnerable populations feel confident, secure, truly welcomed, day or night.
That's the goal. Welcomed and secure day or night.
Okay. And what about supporting social reproduction and leisure? We talked extensively about time poverty, the double day. How can a park help with that?
Well, a feminist park can be intentionally designed to acknowledge and actively facilitate women's diverse needs, offering spaces for genuine relaxation, not just activity, spaces for multi-generational community gathering, and integrated amenities rather than just, say, isolated playgrounds for kids or sterile sports fields.
Integrated amenities. Like what?
This is absolutely key. By recognizing time poverty, a feminist park could include beautifully designed, visible, and accessible childcare facilities.
Childcare in the park?
Yes, not tucked away in some hidden corner, but integrated seamlessly into the park's flow. It could feature shaded, comfortable seating areas directly adjacent to play spaces.
Ah, so caregivers can supervise while actually resting or socializing?
Exactly, allowing parents and caregivers to supervise children while also resting, reading, or connecting with others. It could offer flexible programming too, maybe fitness classes, workshops, community events that caters to different schedules and acknowledges caregiving needs.
So helping to alleviate some of the burdens of the double day rather than adding to them.
Yes, creating an environment where leisure and caregiving aren't mutually exclusive, but can coexist harmoniously, enriching the lives of women and caregivers rather than burdening them further.
The park's vision also aims to promote equity and accessibility, doesn't it? Directly addressing those deep class and racialized disparities we saw so starkly in the case studies from Manila, Georgetown, even Canada.
Yes, and this is potentially a profound act of restorative urban justice.
Ow.
The Feminist Park explicitly aims to ensure equitable access for all, particularly migrant and racialized women who are often systemically denied access to quality public spaces in their own communities. Remember the garden cities versus garbage cities.
Yes, a stark contrast.
A feminist park becomes a deliberate counterpoint to those exclusionary urban landscapes. It strives to provide a dignified, well-resourced, welcoming public space, regardless of one's socioeconomic status, racial background, or migration status.
So it's about dismantling the physical and social barriers that prevent certain communities from enjoying the full benefits of urban life, giving everyone access to quality green space.
That's the core idea. Equity in access.
And finally, drawing from the powerful insights of movements like slut walks. A feminist park can be much more than just a beautiful green space, right? It can be a vital, intentional space for political expression and community building.
Absolutely. It can and arguably should be intentionally designed as a space that not only welcomes, but actively encourages collective action.
Collective action
Like protest, community organizing, the challenging of patriarchal, heteronormative, and racist norms that Peake and Pratt details so well.
So fostering a sense of shared agency, visibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
It becomes a tangible site for social change, a place where the community can gather to discuss pressing issues, organize for justice, demand accountability from their city leaders.
A space where the marginalized can find their collective voice, express concerns without fear.
Exactly. Reinforcing the fundamental idea that public space is a forum for democratic expression and a catalyst for liberation. A space that doesn't just tolerate diverse expressions, but actively celebrates and protects them.
Okay. Here's where it truly comes full circle for me. This isn't just about creating a pretty green space for aesthetic value, is it?
Not at all. It's much deeper.
It's about deliberately designing for liberation, learning from all the systemic ways current urban environments fail diverse women and gender-diverse people across economic, social, environmental dimensions.
Taking the critique and turning it into creation.
Yeah. This deep dive into Peake and Pratt's article shows us exactly why such a park is not just desired, not just some progressive ideal, but utterly essential.
A comprehensive, tangible response.
A response to the multifaceted insecurities detailed by their groundbreaking research. It really is about turning critique into creation.
Well said.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, as you navigate your own urban landscape? Peake and Pratt's deep dive into women in cities has shown us unequivocally that our urban environments are not neutral backdrops.
No, they're active players.
Active, often unwitting players in perpetuating gendered inequalities. From the subtle daily negotiations of time and space to overt acts of violence, from economic precarity to environmental injustice. These challenges are all interwoven into the very fabric of our cities.
Which raises an important and, I think, urgent question. Given this detailed analysis of how urban design, or the lack thereof, reproduces gendered insecurities and violence across economic, social, and environmental dimensions, what specific actionable changes?
Actionable, yeah.
Changes beyond individual protests could communities and urban planners implement today to start dismantling these structural barriers, to create truly liberating public spaces?
What are the immediate practical steps? Things inspired directly by the historical trends and diverse global examples highlighted in this deep dive.
Exactly. Steps that can start to transform our unseen spaces into genuinely inclusive and empowering ones for everyone. What does that look like right now on the ground?
So a final thought for you, the listener. As you move through your own city, maybe armed with some of these insights, start to notice the unseen spaces around you.
Really look at them.
Yeah. Ask yourself, who is this particular space, this park, this street, this plaza truly designed for? And perhaps more critically, who might it be subtly or overtly excluding?
Who feels comfortable here and who doesn't, and why?
And then what small or large changes could make it more inclusive, more liberating, and ultimately a safer place for everyone? The power to reshape our cities and maybe in turn our societies truly begins, perhaps, with learning to see the invisible.
This knowledge is a tool, really. A tool for seeing your city differently and potentially for helping to change it.
It's been a really insightful deep dive, I think. This document provides such a vital framework, especially for projects like the Feminist Park Project that are trying to build something fundamentally different. It shows just how interlinked urban design and social justice are.
It really does. But it also shows the scale of the challenge, right? It requires sustained effort, real commitment, and a genuine willingness to shift power dynamics in how cities get made and managed.
Definitely. It makes you think about how we ensure those voices, the ones that have been excluded, are actually heard and centered.
There's another quote from Sarah Ahmed in the Handbook that feels relevant here.
Go on.
She says, "If you have to shout to be heard, you are heard as shouting."
That's powerful.
It makes you ponder, doesn't it? How can the design of public space itself work differently? How can it amplify the voices of those who've been historically silenced, ensuring their needs are met without them having to shout just to be noticed?
How can design itself listen? That's a really provocative thought to end on.
A lot to think about.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.